Okay, Google. Do you love Facebook Live as much as I do? That's a pretty resounding no. Great. Well, hey everyone, I'm Chris Velasquez, Engadget Senior Mobile Editor. This is the Google Pixel XL. This, more specifically, it finally got around to interpreting my question. I was just going to say that Google Assistant is generally really, really good at picking up voice commands and voice sort of queries, and it really wasn't there for a good 15 seconds. Let's try that again. Okay, Google, how old is Facebook Live? Okay, Google, how old is Vladimir Putin?
Vladimir Putin is 64 years old.
Okay, Google, show me sushi restaurants nearby. Oh, I almost botched that one.
I found a few places within 0.3 miles.
So this is a very quick taste of Google Assistant, which is really the big reason why anyone would want a Google Pixel phone. It is very much the star of the show. I mean, it would kind of have to be. It's definitely not the design. I gotta tell you, I do love this device. It is my Android daily driver. I'm a two-phone kind of guy. I generally walk around with an iPhone 7 Plus and this. I prefer holding this by far because you've got a 5.5-inch screen running at Quad HD. Check that out really quick. Like, the clarity on that thing is pretty fantastic. And if we actually jump in and change up some wallpapers, we'll actually get a really good sense of the crispness available to this display. And I gotta tell you, I love this wallpaper picker, by the way. It is, it's technically available in the Play Store, but I think only accessible if you have a Pixel device. So if you don't, I'm so sorry. This is great. Actually, you'll see that you get metadata down there as well, which is new, part of Android 7.1 Nougat. But this is just part of the story. So as I've said, this is the Google Pixel XL. If you have any questions, by the way, let us know. Obviously, I'm Chris Velasco. Behind the camera, Mallory Johns, our social media guru, and really kind of digging this thing so far. I do think it's probably my favorite Android phone of, maybe not of all time. You know what? I just got ahead of myself there. I think that honor goes to and bear with me folks, this is going back a bit, the HTC One M7, which was the first Android phone I ever really, really fell in love with. But I think it's sort of telling that I do have a fondness for HTC because this too is an HTC-made device, even though Google never really talks about it. If you can't really see it because this is a dark phone and the writing is really tiny, but right there at the bottom, which I guarantee, Mallory, you're getting in there, you're not going to be able to see it. It says phone by Google, which is technically true. This is the first phone that Google has ever really tried to design end-to-end. So therefore, Google has more control over the development and the destiny of this device than really any other hardware thing it's ever made. And it's really no surprise that this generally is a very, very good phone. Very fast. I'm a big fan of the performance. It does have one of Qualcomm's Snapdragon 821 chipsets. That's one of the next generation chipsets. We are seeing it trickle out into a couple other devices already. It isn't a huge leap over the 820 as you would kind of expect based off of its name, but it does run really fast and smooth. And I actually spend a lot of time just sort of swiping around and seeing if I can make it stutter or slow down. And I've generally had a lot of really, really good luck with it. So as far as the daily driver goes, this thing is not going to leave you wanting for power. Can we talk about this camera really quick? Like, this camera situation is pretty bonkers. So right around the back here, we've got a 12 megapixel camera. It's a Sony, I believe it's the IMX338 sensor. I'm sure you'll fact check me on that one if I'm incorrect. It is as I've said, it's a Sony sensor. It is actually used in, I think, one other device out there right now, the Xiaomi Mi 5S, which we're never going to see in America, most likely. I've asked basically everyone I know at Xiaomi to just make their phones available here because they're generally fantastic and pretty cheap to boot. I think the Note 2, which actually looks a lot like the Galaxy Note 7, which you can't get anymore, incredible performance, incredible value. But anyway, back to this camera. It takes probably the best photos I've ever taken with a smartphone. That's, considering I reviewed the Galaxy Note 7 and the S7 Twins, the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, the stakes are really high here because ultimately everyone is trying to make a device where you don't have to think about settings or the process of taking photos. You just sort of point it at something and it takes an astonishingly good picture. And we're getting there. We're so close. And this is probably, if that's you, if that's something that really weighs heavily into your smartphone sort of buying decision right now, that's definitely something you have to keep in mind. This is a phenomenal camera, although I do have to point out, it's not strictly because of the camera itself. Like I said, this sensor is used in at least one other device. We're going to see it in more, I'm sure. But it is Google's software. It is the stuff working in the background that makes it so good. I wonder if I could pull up some photos for you really quick here. They should all be appropriate. I'm fairly sure that is the case. But Mallory, while I search for photos, do people want to know anything about this
If you
phone?
have any questions, comments, please drop them here down below in the comments section, and I will try my best to read them off to Mr. Velasco here. Do you think Mike Myers, really?
Mike Myers.
Mike Myers.
I went to school with a Mike Myers, but I guarantee you're not that Mike Myers, which is a little sad for me. I miss that guy.
Do you think
If
that
that is you,
Apple
good for you.
will launch a lawsuit saying this is too similar to its phone design?
I don't think that they will, if only because, I mean, so there's a couple different ways to look at it. I personally don't think it looks that similar to an iPhone. Mallory would probably really disagree. We were talking about this just before we got on. I don't think it looks that similar to an iPhone. I think it looks pretty amateurish, honestly. And if Apple were to go after Google by saying this looks like an iPhone, I think they're actually kind of doing themselves a disservice, because this is fine. Like, I'm not a dog standing in a burning room. This is fine. It's okay.
I mean, I think it's like, we've already discussed this before, folks. I definitely think that it looks like an iPhone. Even the glare that you're getting from my camera, it looks like piano black on an iPhone 7 Plus.
It's really interesting you mention that, because Google calls this, I forget exactly what their branding is, but it's quite black, I believe is what it is. And if you actually take a look, this is not black at all. Like, it's not a black phone, it's gunmetal, which is very silly
It
and
looks
surprising.
very piano black.
It's 100% not. Like, people out there watching this on Facebook, if you're thinking about buying a Google Pixel or Pixel XL in quite black, it's just not black. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not. And that's actually really kind of sad, considering I loved the black Galaxy Note 7 so much. To me, it's maybe one of the most beautiful devices I've ever seen. And it's
Except it
it's not
explodes, you know?
it's not black. Well, I mean, sure, fine. Mine hasn't exploded yet. I should probably send that back, but I actually don't also really care what happens to me. Like, if my thing blows up,
Chris
I'm not
Velasco,
super
we
worried
knew
about
him
it.
well.
You knew me well. You knew I loved this stuff. I did it all for you. I also, I guess, because that, blame you all for everything.
Ivar Kovlik, this is a really interesting question.
Bring it on.
Can you test the NFC antenna in the range, or have you tested the NFC antenna in the range?
I've not tested it more. I haven't tested it very stringently, so I've used it for sort of pay transactions. That seems to work fine. That's actually a really good point. I'm gonna tell you what. I will play with that a bit more, and if something interesting does turn up, maybe I'll write a story about it. If not, we'll hit you up on Facebook, kind of let you know what's going on. But no, so thank you for that. We'll look into that a bit more, actually. That's something that doesn't actually get a whole lot of attention. Maybe that should change. By the way, if you guys have any questions about a review process, because we did review this last week, I believe it was, we're actually always like super stoked to hear what you guys think, especially to get a better sense of what you guys feel is important when we do our reviews. It's a process. I think all of us approach it within the same framework, but we have our own quirks. So if there's anything you sort of take issue with in our reviews as well, let us know and we'll kind of hash it out together.
Here's a question for you. Because of Velasco, I know that you have feelings for BlackBerry's D-Tech.
Ooh, I do have feelings for it. They're not all great.
Michael Chaney, how does this compare to the D-Tech 50?
Wow. Okay, so I'm not gonna be the troll that I usually am and say don't buy a D-Tech 50. If you're really into security, there is an argument to be made for going for a D-Tech 50 over a Pixel. I will say this: if you're more concerned with performance, if you want something that's kind of gonna blow the doors off your ish. The Pixel's definitely going to be there for you. The D-Tech 60 though, which was just announced, I think actually might be available for like $500 now too. So a little bit more reasonably priced than the Google Pixel. That might be an option for you as well. Generally though, bland design aside, I think the combination of this incredible screen and the great battery and this freaking first-rate camera and sort of sensor software back end. Like, there, I don't think is an Android phone that really lives up to the standard that the Pixel sort of sets.
Is it thicker than an iPhone? Someone wants to know.
No. I don't have the exact dimensions in front of me. I actually don't have my iPhone in my pocket right now. But so to give you a sense, I mentioned this earlier, I do carry an iPhone 7 Plus most of the time. And it is, I believe it's a hair thinner. More importantly, it's a little narrower and a little shorter. So I've used the 6S and the 6 Plus and those big iPhones for a while. And after a while, my hand just sort of like curls in on itself. It turns into a gnarled claw because I'm like reaching over and holding the thing from below with my pinky, and it's kind of heavy and it's not very comfortable to me. And I've actually never had that problem with the Pixel XL. So if you're the kind of person who likes big phone performance, big phone screens, without the sort of physical discomfort that sometimes comes with using a big phone, I mean, this is probably really worth your consideration. I'm a really big fan.
Another good question from Jeff P.
Keep these good questions coming, guys. I'm really
Pixel XL
digging
versus S7 Edge.
Oh, I think ultimately a lot of the fundamentals are similar. You're going to have very similar performance. The S7 Edge does have a Snapdragon 820. It was one of the first devices that we saw with an 820, whereas this has an 821. 4 gigabytes of RAM across the board. I think it's the sort of miscellaneous column that kind of does it for me about the Edge. And again, this is purely for me. Your priorities may differ a bit, but so this is water resistant to an extent. I believe Google said it's IP53 or 35. Either way, it's not the great stuff. It's not the stuff that you want, and frankly, it's not the stuff that we see on most flagship phones these days. I reviewed my S7 and S7 Edge by like throwing it in a beer, which is rapidly becoming like my review cliche for waterproof phones.
You also dropped your iPhone 7 Plus in the beer too.
Yeah, well, I dropped that in like a full pitcher of beer. I think this one we were at a restaurant a couple blocks away from the office. We convinced them to like very nicely give us a big stein to like throw the phone in. So that your S7 will handle. I guess I would say it handles life, the sort of mishaps of life, a little bit better than the Pixel XL does. Camera, I do generally give the Pixel XL the edge. By the way, the difference in camera between the XL and the regular Pixel is non-existent. It's the exact same sensor, same back-end software doing its stuff. I do prefer this as an all-around camera. I think it's better in that respect. But A, not by much, and B, there are definitely situations where Samsung cameras do a little bit better. So I live in an area where there's a lot of green, lots of open space, very beautiful parks, things like that. I've found that the Galaxy S7 series tends to do much better with accurately exposing those sorts of landscapes and also reproducing the color. So if you're an outdoorsman, if you really dig just sort of like not being indoors, there's an argument to be made for embracing the S7. Ultimately, like I said, though, it really is just a matter of personal preference. I love the sort of approach that Google took here. I do think, in terms of software, they could have stood to differentiate it a bit more. I think, okay, Google. I think the Assistant's generally pretty sweet, but it's not at its best yet. The third-party integrations with apps like Uber and like
found.
Domino's, those things are coming, but they're not quite here yet. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this shakes out. I think the Pixel XL has more potential. I think there's an argument to be made that the Galaxy S7 Edge is maybe the better product slightly out of the gate.
Lots of questions.
That was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry,
One that 3 people have been asking about, does Google Assistant live up to the hype?
Yes and no. It's really interesting because I like to use phones as assistants. I remember the very first time I played with the Moto X, and this is like 2013, I worked for a different website. I got it customized, got like a little engraving on the back, and then basically loved trying to talk to it the way I would talk to Mallory. Like, hey, how's it going? Can you do this thing for me? What's going on? Like, tell me what's going on in my day. And that sort of kernel, I think, has remained with Google. So we've seen, obviously, Google now sort of become a thing. But I think that core idea of having an assistant in a lot of ways started with the Moto X over there, because Motorola was a Google company for a spell, and it is sort of something that is much, much better now. You might, if you tuned in right as this stream started, you might have noticed the OK Google command like taking a little more time than expected. So let's try this. OK Google, Show me sushi restaurants around here.
I found a few places within 0.3 miles.
So things like this work very well. It's very good at figuring out where you are, what's around you. In terms of as a proximity sort of centric assistant, this works really well. I think the speech recognition is generally freaking awesome as well. There was a moment where it just sort of like failed to grab onto my words, but that is honestly the first time I've ever seen that. So I guess if you did see that at the beginning of our stream, consider yourselves just a little bit privileged. I've never seen Google Assistant screw up that badly before. I will say the hype is like, I don't think anyone ever really catches up to the hype train, especially because the line that we've been fed by Google about how good this thing is going to be was really lofty. Sundar Pichai says, hey, we're basically going to build a personal Google for everybody. And it's close. The foundation's definitely there, but we're going to see this platform come into its own over the next couple months. It's only a matter of time before it starts picking up cool new tricks. Actually, I think we could try this. So just the other day, it got access to IFTTT recipes. IFTTT, if this then that, is a service that basically connects some web-facing services to others. So let's try something real quick here. Mallory, you got this?
Yeah.
Okay, Google. Tell Slack I'm running a little late.
Gonna slack that fee.
Thanks. So basically, that's a recipe I set up the other day that basically tells Google Assistant to capture what I'm saying, transcribe it, pass it over to Slack, which has an IFTTT bot, and in like the private Slack channel that I'm in, this has just appeared. So the people in there are probably like, what the hell are you talking about? And you can actually also customize the response too. Like Google doesn't know to call me V, and it doesn't really speak that informally. So for it to say, gonna Slack that V, that is something I sort of cooked up. And it does offer a lot of flexibility. This is stuff that we've seen for a while now. Amazon's Echo has done this for over a year. But, I mean, it's actually pretty impressive considering Google Assistant is available on the Pixel XL, Allo, sort of, technically, it's a preview, and Google Home, which is not out yet. So to have that sort of out of the gate, one could argue it's Google just kind of playing the game with table stakes. Like, this is the level of performance you're going to have. But, I mean, it's nice to have, even when, people haven't adopted this phone, they haven't adopted Google Home yet, it's really great to have that just sort of from the get-go. Really at it with the long-winded answers today, guys. So if you have any questions that I can answer in 5 words or less, I can do that too. I will ramble, but I don't always need to. Mallory, anything else?
Let's take one final question.
Let's take one
here
question. Yeah.
From Luis Santana in relation to Carlos Santana, maybe, hopefully.
What?
How is the use one-handed?
So this let's set the stage here. This is the size of my hand. This is the size of the Google Pixel XL. Roughly the same. I don't have huge hands. This obviously is the bigger of the two devices. I've never really had any trouble. You are going to have to like reach for it. So this dreaded position where you kind of like angle your hand and reach with the thumb, that is a thing you're still going to have to do. That's not at all an issue with the Google Pixel, the smaller version with the 5-inch 1080p display. But frankly, I would rather have the extra screen size, resolution, and battery. So if you're looking for sort of the bar none best Android smartphone, like don't worry about the Pixel. The XL is where it's at. But anyway, in general, I haven't had a whole lot of trouble with it. As I've mentioned before, I am sort of an iPhone 7 Plus guy. That's my other daily driver. And even though that's lighter than the iPhone 6s Plus was, I do feel that a lot more. I am just sort of like struggling to make that work. But I've never really had that issue with the Pixel. It's very light. It's very thin. It's very well made in typical HTC fashion. But using it sort of on the daily like this, you do sometimes have to sort of reorganize where your hands are. You do have to kind of shimmy up and down the phone. But in general, that's just sort of how you have to live with the bigger phone, unless you have like enormous mitts, in which case this might even feel a little too small for you. Or you have a selfie stick like Mallory, which I think is terrible. So don't do that. Don't do that thing. But no, I'm joking around. This, if you're looking for sort of I'm blowing up here. If you're looking for a device that works really well in one hand, you'd probably do better with the Pixel, but I think the overall package of the Pixel XL, from the components to the screen to just the overall build, I mean, this is where you want to go. There are compromises to be sure, but I think this is well worth like the extra size.
Let's give the folks at home another beautiful look at the Pixel XL before we sign off.
All right, how you like that, folks? Yeah. I never really mentioned the Nexus imprint fingerprint sensor, by the way, although it is really, really good. It's very fast. It feels about as fast as the one that we got in the 6P, Huawei 6P last year. I haven't like stopwatched them. I haven't put them right next to each other and tried it, but it's very accurate. I can't remember the last time I've had to try again. So if you're looking for another reason to buy a Pixel, great fingerprint sensor. Okay, Google, say goodbye to everybody.
Here is a matching video.
God damn it. Well, anyway, that's been Google Assistant. What is this video? That's been Google Assistant. I have been and shall remain Chris Velasco, Senior Mobile Editor at Engadget. Thank you so much for watching. Let's do this again soon. We got a lot of stuff.
Review up on site for this thing?
I guess. I mean, who reads words anymore, though? Like, it's a Friday. Who reads words on a Friday? Anyway, yes, I do. If you do want to read several thousand words about my thoughts on this phone and its little brother, the normal Pixel, check out Engadget.com. We have the full review there, plus I think a pretty sweet-looking video that you can check out as well. And yeah, stay tuned. We're going to do a lot more, probably not so much with this phone. I think we're moving on to bigger and maybe not necessarily better things, but we have a lot of stuff coming. Stay tuned. We're going to bring you a lot more live coverage, and hopefully we just get to have a conversation again soon. So, thanks.